Enoch and the Nephilim. Study about the biblical passages about Enoch, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, the Enachites, the Rephaites, and the Emits. Father Jose Antonio FORTEA. In the Word of God we will not find a single verse that is wrong. The Scriptures have God as their author, so they have not been contaminated by any false legend. In the book everything is true and there is nothing but truth. Commentators who have neither the faith of the prophets nor the apostles think that some of the errors present in the legends and mythologies may be included in this book. All conceivable human causes could intervene in the formation of the text. But our faith assures us that, in the end, the holy breath of the Father went through each and every one of his words so that not the slightest stain of error was left in a single line. If the Bible tells us that giants walked on the face of the earth before the flood, it is because that was so. I already anticipate in advance that we are talking about human beings who were about 3 meters tall. We are not talking about colossi, but very tall humans. I will then offer the detailed rationale for making this claim. There is nothing in the Bible that is useless. If the Lord wanted to reveal to us a little about some mysterious things that took place in the first moments of history, this is not done in vain. In His words there is always a lesson. In the Bible we also find present mysteries. We are like children and we like things of this type. These kinds of extraordinary events, be they giants, be it the contest between Saint Michael and the devil over the body of Moses, the miracles of Elisha, or so many other passages, are the salt of the Bible. Unfortunately, in our time, fanciful people, lacking the guidance of the Church, have taken those verses to use as support for their fanciful theories. But the biblical texts do not give rise to it. It is the lack of common sense that has used those verses for their baseless hypotheses. And so some use those passages as loose pieces for their alien dream puzzles. The Bible forms an impressive and superhuman unity. Unity that has been given to humanity with a tradition, a sacred text linked to a holy tradition. But non-believers take the Scriptures as if it were just another text, a merely human text. The result is that we find those who rummage through the Bible as if it were a box full of loose parts to use at will. The minds of the most fanciful individuals generate theories such as that among us there are hybrids between humans and who knows what race. The Bible makes it clear that these tall men were human, fully human. The texts that I am going to analyze are among the favorites for this type of reader that I have described. Nothing I am going to say has anything to do with what they have written or described in countless documentaries. For this book I base myself on the exegesis of sacred texts and only on the exegesis of those texts. I regularly read the Bible in the New Revised Standard Version translation, and I am having so much work while writing this work that I have left the texts untranslated. I hope my readers will excuse me. Translating them would have meant spending an hour of my time, and I ask you to believe me when I tell you that I need that hour. The biblical texts about the giants do not have the same importance as the texts about the incarnation of the Word in history. In the Scriptures there are small things and big things. Anyway, let's get into these interesting parts of the Bible and remember that, whether it's the giants on earth or the seraphim in heaven, everything is for the greater glory of God. Yes, in the Bible there are little things. But even the smallest is beautiful and not without importance. The text of Genesis. In the book of Genesis we find the following mysterious verses that, century after century, have powerfully called the attention of all Bible readers.
When people began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were beautiful, and they took for themselves wives of all those they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not dwell in mortals forever, because they are flesh, his days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God entered into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. These were the heroes of old, renowned warriors, Genesis 6 verses 1-4.
The word that, in almost all translations of the Bible, is rendered by giants, in Hebrew is Nephilim, which comes from the root nephil, which means to fall. They are called that, or because they are children of the fallen, that is, of the fallen angels, or because they fell, that is, because they disappeared. In the translations they are called giants, because the Jewish tradition affirmed that they were such. And so the 1970s version translates that term as giants twice, Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33. It is a correct translation. Now, it is true that, in the Hebrew vocabulary, the Nephilim are a type of giant, those who were born from those unnatural unions that Genesis speaks of. Another word that deserves attention is the one that in the version of the Bible that I have placed above is translated as daughters of humans, and that in Hebrew appears as daughters of Adam. Who are these sons of God and these daughters of Adam? A first possibility is that he is referring to humanity dividing into two branches. One good and one bad. But this possibility does not hold. Because the expression, sons of God, appears again in the Bible in the book of Job referring to angelic spirits.
One day the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them, Job 1 verse 6.
The Bible instills in us the idea that human beings have God as their father. But the expression, sons of God, is a term that, in the Old Testament, appears referring to angelic spirits. In Genesis there is a terminological difference between the sons of God and the sons of Adam. Nor can that verse refer to the Cainite progeny, for then they would be called sons of God as opposed to daughters of Adam. Neither being called sons of God agrees with the bad branch, nor does it fit that the women of the good branch of humanity be called daughters of Adam. Since Cain was also the son of Adam and his daughters were daughters of Adam. Adam as the daughters of Seth and other descendants of the first parents. Discarded this line of interpretation, what remains is what was the common Jewish interpretation when reading this text, that those sons of God were angelic spirits. This was the Jewish interpretation, first, because the book of Enoch makes it explicit. Work to which I will refer in detail later. Second, because as a result of that union against nature, the Nephilim were born, who in the Jewish tradition were giants. If it had been a union between humans, an offspring with extraordinary characteristics would not have been born. Furthermore, the next verse after the appearance of the giants was that iniquity increased greatly on the earth.
Yahweh saw that the wickedness of men was great on earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was continually only the evil. Genesis 6:5.
It is not said that the main fault for the generalization of this evil was those unions against nature, but the verse comes immediately after. It implies that those unions helped the evil grow. The Bible does not detail the sins committed in that phase of history. God has no interest in describing the evil of that time.
He only stops to tell us what is going to be convenient for us. But, even if the perversions committed at that time were silent, they had to be very great for the Creator to make the decision to start over. The Lord said, "I will cleanse the men I have created from the face of the earth." Genesis 6:7.
Very great was that degradation for a sin to happen that is never mentioned again in the Bible, the sexual union between demons and humans. Exorcists have indeed heard such stories. But such unions have never been heard to produce any fruit. Many have wondered how it is possible that such a huge transgression, such as those unions were, could occur. It is something unusual. Yes, but the punishment was also unusual, since the face of the earth had to be cleansed of those corrupt men. Clean, that is the translation of the Hebrew verb that is used. It is necessary to record a small detail that some exegetes have noted, and that is that the text seems to indicate that the Nephilim already existed when the union between the two races took place. But let us remember that the tenor of the entire Nephilim passage gives the impression that it is an interpolation from another tradition. As if some verses had been taken from another oral saga. I am not referring to the Book of Enoch, but to another previous source. An early source prior to the writing of the text that would later be known under the title of the Book of Enoch. We can even imagine that it was an oral saga that was told around the bonfires of nomadic shepherds. That archaic tone is reflected in the disorder of the entire Nephilim passage in that chapter of Genesis. It is obvious now, and it was obvious then. But it is clear that the hand that included those verses in the written text of Genesis wanted to preserve the literalness of the other saga. It seemed so venerable to him that he did not want to recompose the text of the interpolation. The sequence of the passage is as follows. Sin of union against nature, Genesis 6:2. Existence of the Nephilim, Genesis 6:4a. Repetition of the existence of that sin, Genesis 6:4b. Clause the Nephilim were on earth in those days and also later, Genesis 6:4. I believe that it should be interpreted in the sense that it was a race, that is, that the giants did not appear in a timely manner. It is fascinating that God allowed the interpolation of all three elements of that, probably oral, sequence when Genesis was finally written down, because that is how we get the ancient flavor of the other tradition. The reader of the passage does not miss on the first reading that the style changes with respect to the preceding text and the one that follows. But the conclusion of the reading of the passage is clear, and this is how the Jewish and Christian exegetically tradition has understood it. The Nephilim existed only from the union between demons and humans.